Welcome to Scoreography, a podcast about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I'm Wendy Buskey.
And I'm Adrian Buskey, and this is our Grand Prix de France 2024 recap episode. And I will make a caveat that it was only at the moment when I posted the last episode that I realized I didn't even mention that it was the Skate Canada episode in the intro because I was brain dead that day for whatever reason. But yeah, so this one is actually the Grand Prix de France episode. We were recording this on the Monday after the event. It is a rainy, nasty, gloomy day, one day before the US presidential elections. So if we sound slightly stressed or out of sorts, there's a lot of context for that. But we watched a whole weekend of skating from France, and
It was a lot. It was a lot of skating, I should say.
It was a lot of skating.
And some of it was great.
Yeah.
And some of it was messy. And some of it was just outright confusing. But, you know, it's been an interesting Grand Prix so far.
There's already been a lot made about some of the lower scoring events and just kind of how messy a lot of these Grand Prix events have been so far. I think in this one, you see the women actually come up significantly over the scores from the first two Grand Prix events, which was where a lot of the concern was being placed. And then you watch the men's event just completely collapse, and to come out with a final that is so far behind the median numeric average that it's kind of nuts. So I figure we should probably just start with the women because I think that's where our big bright spot is, and then we'll trickle down through all the rest of it.
I think that's a great plan. So with the women, it's easy to say that the best, most wonderful, exciting thing about this event was that we saw a new U.S. record established by Amber Glenn, who got a 78 for her short program and is now the highest scored short program of any U.S. woman ever.
In international
competition, which is wonderful. And that program deserved it.
Amber's performance here was what we've been looking for from her for a long time. A combination of two strong performances. The free skate definitely had some problems. It was not anywhere near as clean as that short program, but it was enough and change to take the top spot here. But the short program was astonishing. It was everything that you want from Amber Glenn. It was an enormous, perfect triple axel, very clean jumps, terrific skating skills, tremendous performance value on the ice and musicality. And yeah, it was a reason why she got that 78 because it was astonishing.
It really was. And the thing is, yeah, her free skate, not as clean and could have lost it for her. But the reason it didn't is one, she was 8 points ahead of Cheon Kim, who was in second place after the short, and she fell back off the podium. So that helped Amber's cause. But also, just from the standpoint of Amber's overall skating, you can see that there's a certain level of expectation that you have if you've watched her a long time, like when it's going to start falling apart in her free skate, and it didn't. So while she had mistakes and it wasn't perfect, and she admitted she was really nervous going in, it still looked a lot stronger and a lot more confident than we've seen her before. And even coming off the ice after some mistakes in that free skate, she didn't look like she was going to fall apart. I was really happy personally to see it because she's talked so openly about all of her mental health struggles in the sport, and seeing her have that level of confidence and calm, just understanding like, okay, it wasn't my day today, but the competition was just really refreshing and gave me a lot of optimism for Amber going forward.
The mental game seems so much stronger. She looked much more like she had that champion mindset that you want to see from a high-level competitor.
Agreed.
Much like we talked about at Skate Canada, where Kaori Sakamoto really won that event in the short program, that is sort of applicable here in the sense of she was definitely carried by that huge score in the short program. But like you said, things got shuffled around a little bit once you got past her. So in the second place spot here, her second time on a podium in this Grand Prix series and being the first woman to lock her way to the Grand Prix final is Japan's Wakaba Higuchi, who scored a 206.08, which notably would have just trounced her number at Skate America, where she won. So even though she came in second here, she did it with a much stronger score and overall performance, I think, than what she had at Skate America. She looked absolutely divine. It was fantastic, but she was coming up from third place after the short. So she really put a little pressure on Amber because she was within about 4 points. And if her short program had been a little stronger, she might have overtaken her. But that's what we want to see. We want to see a real solid, tight race from competitors who are actually getting those good scores. And the fact that all three of our podium women here were over 200 is very refreshing after the last couple of competitions.
I loved Wakaba here because it just showed that she's making the forward momentum you want to see as we proceed through this season. Her getting that first spot confirmed for the Grand Prix final is just outstanding. And it's just wonderful since she's come so far since the last Olympic Games and gone through so much. So I could not be happier. But in third place, Ryan Sumiyoshi from Japan also showed up really well, especially in the free skate. Not quite having that quad toe that she was getting more consistent with last season. Not quite there right now, but the rest of her skating skills looked wonderful. And just overall, you could see that evolution of as a skater that she's making.
I think this is the third year in a row that she's taken bronze at Grand Prix de France.
Second or third, I can't remember which.
I saw her post on Instagram about it.
France is for her, apparently.
Yeah. Now, you would hope you'd be moving up the chain, but Ryan is still fairly new to senior competition. I always think of Ryan Sumiyoshi as an investment skater. In my mind, she is sort of an up-and-comer, maybe next cycle superstar. She hasn't had quite the same kind of breakout that like Hano Yoshida did last year. But Ryan is such a wonderful skater who has grown so much just in this last season. When you look at the last couple of seasons, she looked a lot more like a jock. She did have a quad, which is very rare in the senior women's competition. Her artistic stuff was a little bit more juniorish. But what we're seeing here is a much more refined and well-rounded skater, which makes me really excited for the future with her. So while I don't have expectations that she's going to, say, dark horse win the Grand Prix final or something, I do think that Ryan is definitely one to watch, and in a deep field of Japanese women is still very much a factor in all of this.
Yeah, you can't discount her. In fourth here, though, we had Cheon Kim, and she had a remarkable short program, but was still 8 points back from Amber at that point. But at a 70-point score, she still looked fairly solid and ready to take a medal here. Her free skate, unfortunately, just didn't go her way. She admitted in the post interview that going into the free skate, she was definitely very nervous, and you could see it. She looked stiff. It does not concern me in the long run for this season. The only thing that it does worry me on is if she's going to make the Grand Prix final. That might have been lost here, but with the season we're seeing, if she comes back and wins her next Grand Prix, she might still make it. It's kind of hard to say. It's so up in the air. But with her total score of 199.99, she was just a teeny tiny bit back from that 200 mark. And it's worth noting, this score still would have won Skate America. So when you look at it that way, it's both concerning and then the standpoint that Skate America had such low scores and Skate Canada really wasn't too far ahead. I mean, it's a little concerning, the scores we're seeing overall this season, but we did see three really strong performances from the three top women here.
After such a strong early season start for Cheon Kim, I think a lot of people, including myself, were really kind of looking at Cheon as, oh, this could really be her season. And I think that is still very much in the cards.
Absolutely.
I don't know that I've seen her look this nervous in any major competition in quite a while. Cheon is generally very unflappable compared to a lot of the rest of the Korean contingent, but it just felt like she had a lot of pressure on her shoulders at this one. One of the big worries with the Korean competitors is that their federation kind of overskates them. They are competing in so many domestic competitions and regional things and just sometimes don't seem like they get a break. And I don't know how that's impacted her, but this was definitely not quite what we were looking for. Again, so close to cracking 200, still a gorgeous short program, but a fourth place finish is not necessarily disqualifying depending on what she could do in her next appearance. So with any luck, we'll still see her, but anything could happen.
Kind of in that mindset, not for the Grand Prix, but maybe for an alternate. Sarah Everhart I mean, she needs a lot of work when it comes to the presentation side of things because the emotion of her skate isn't there. She's not really feeling any of the music, but she was clean here. And with a 196.94, she came in fifth, coming in ahead of people like Nina Pizzarone, Maya Mihara, and Anastasia Gubanova. That's really impressive this season for her.
Sarah has remarkable consistency. She is very much the jock out there. She has great jumps, great technical content in her skates. But yeah, she doesn't change her expression at all for the entire thing. And when you have something like Firebird that should feel like it's really picking up and generating energy, she just doesn't know how to do that yet. She's interesting because she didn't make significant waves on the junior scene before emerging at American Senior Nationals last year and coming just off the podium there, which was pretty surprising. You look at that jump technique and it is so strong. The foundation for everything is there. So I think that if she can continue delivering those types of skates while actually learning how to emote and interpret the music in a more visible fashion, I think that she could really get somewhere. But yeah, alternate, it's a possibility. She could be a spoiler candidate for that.
And really, it's also up in the air. I just saw the news that both Luna Hendricks and Isabeau Levito have pulled out of Finlandia Trophy. Isabeau was one of the people that has podiumed so far, so her withdrawing essentially removes her as a possibility. So anything is possible right now.
Okay, so you're hitting me with a bombshell because I did not know that information about Isabeau at all. I knew that Luna had pulled out, and that didn't surprise me because the first time that we saw Luna this season looked really, really rough.
Yeah,
and
she didn't look ready at all.
Her programs did not look ready for prime time. But yeah, I did not know about Isabeau pulling out of the Grand Prix at all. So that's pretty shocking because, like you said, she already had a podium placement. So that really does shuffle the game up a little bit for all of the women here and makes me really wonder what's up with that. So
yeah.
Very, very curious about that.
Yes.
The other three people that I would just hit very quickly, Nina Pizzarone looked very similar to what we saw at Skate America. Really nice programs that are just not quite landing. A lot of under rotations, and it feels like the judges have really spotted that as a problem for her now, and so they're really kind of going after it with her. And I think the programs are just kind of failing to connect with audiences as well. I don't get it because Nina's great. I really like these programs. She has one of the best outfits in this season in that red free skate outfit, which is just astounding for me. I'm a graphic designer, and the simplicity of it, the perfect lines of it, how well it moves, all of those things are awesome. I have such high hopes for Nina, but this season is not shaping up very strong so far, but I'm hoping that she peaks later.
Behind her, 7th place, Mai Mihara, one of your, if not your favorite skater.
Oh my God. Yeah, I just, Mai Mihara, even when she's not delivering perfect skates, her interpretation of music, her lyricism, her warmth, the joy that she brings, it just makes me so happy. She is, to me, like an idyllic skater. It is sad to see her end up lower on these podiums, but she is still recovering from a serious injury that has plagued her since last season. And she just doesn't have all of her technical content back yet and is fighting for her consistency. But still, every time she's on the ice, it's magical.
And she looked so happy just to be there. It was just very obvious that she did bring that same joy, whether she wins or loses. It's just, she's remarkable. And behind her, I'd say Anastasia Gubanova did not have her best performance here. We haven't seen a really great performance from her yet this season. She did win a smaller competition earlier, but overall, she's just sort of been lingering in the mid zone, if you will. So I'm waiting for that push forward from her later in the season, hoping we see that, especially maybe at Europeans.
Yeah, I think Goobs is probably looking at Europeans as the kind of primary target, and then hopefully for Worlds afterwards. For a skater with her level of ability, this has been pretty disappointing. I do think it's worth noting that a lot of these women performed at the gala exhibition. There were some really terrific performances. I mean, Amber Glenn was awesome. Wakaba's was absolutely divine. You know, Ryan Semiotians was great. Chian Kim's was great. Nina Pizzarone's was great. I mean, like, just so good across the board. And then there was whatever the hell Gubanova did. I mean, it's very on par with last year's Barbie Girl Gala Skate. This one was more of like a tease.
It was just 4 different pop songs smushed together with her doing quick changes on the ice and posing. I mean, I like, as you refer to her, Goobs. I enjoy her. And And I feel like those exhibition programs are mostly I'm just coming out here to have a good time. And the crowd loved it. So
she vamps.
It makes them happy.
There's just not much skating involved.
There's hardly any skating involved.
Well, let's step on to the big surprise in podiums at this one. And it's one that we're very excited about, but it comes with some strangeness. But that's in the ice dance category, and a first Grand Prix win for the French team, Yevgenia Lapareva and Jeffrey Brosseau, who we adore.
And I love their program so much this season. I think I'm getting redundant at this point, gushing about them.
To see them come out here and perform so well, I kind of think that their free dance was better at Skate Canada than it was here.
Sure.
But they got better scores here, and they seemed surprised by that as well. They had that kind of look of, oh, okay, sure, we'll take that. But it was still dynamite. They were terrific, but I think everybody would have expected them to be the second place team here. It's probably fair to say that this is one of those cases where it's more that Guinard and Fabry from Italy, who were your obvious winners, lost it rather than the French team winning it, in the sense that Guinard and Fabry usually deliver perfection on the ice, and their free dance here was just riddled with problems.
It was nothing short of a mess. And that's me almost quoting Marco Fabry in his post interview, where he talked about it and didn't have a lot to say, but definitely was like, this is the worst we've skated in a long, long time. Not only was there a fall from Marco, who is usually the most solid male partner you could ever imagine, and a master technician, it just was so out of character on a lot of levels, but that wasn't the only problem. Once he fell, it felt like the rest of the program was just littered with issues here and there, not nearly as big, but enough where it makes sense that they would drop as far as they did. I do think they were surprised when they saw their score, even knowing how badly they skated, because their expressions did not look prepared. Them ending up with a 189.08, they haven't seen a score like that in a long time.
That put them a full 6 points and change behind the French team. It put them fifth in the free dance overall, which is an astonishing drop.
Yes.
It also just points to the issue that Guinard and Fabry have this season, at least what I perceive as an issue, which is a terrific rhythm dance that is so much fun and suits them so well. And then this kind of weird robot. I say this all the time. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I like my robots. But this free dance is diminishing returns. The score is going down every competition they do with it. It just really doesn't land. It doesn't seem to work right. Emotionally, it doesn't have the beats. It is not serving them well. And if they want to be competitive in the second half of the season, they either have to immensely overhaul this thing or scrap it and do something else.
I'm going to go on record now as saying if they keep this robot program, they're falling off the world podium. I could be way out of line here because you never know what's going to happen. And goodness gracious, I would never have predicted a dance Grand Prix season so far like this one. It has been a wild ride. But I still just don't see this beating Viren Gibson or possibly even Lejeune Legas. And I know that ice dance is what it is politically, and it's entirely possible they will just win because they are them. But this season is proving that judges are calling things a lot more. The technical panel is being far more critical. And I do really feel like if there's ever a season where things are going to shift, it's going to be this one. So far, Guinard and Fabry haven't given me a reason to think that they're going to stay world medalists this year.
There was something that Mark Henretti said in the ISU broadcast that I don't know that I'd ever heard anybody mention before, which was that in ice dance, there is a rule that if you have a fall in a significant element, that it introduces sort of a cap on what your component scores can be or your performance scores can be for the rest of the skate. There's supposed to be a hard limit of, well, if you mess up something significant, you can't still give them 9s and 10s for the rest of the skate when something has gone wrong.
Yeah, I was a little confused by it. I really feel like I need to do the research. If someone listening knows and feels like dropping a comment, I would appreciate it. But I need to go into the ISU rules and just kind of read more about it. But it does make sense. It totally tracks, especially in ice dance where something like the fall Marco had disrupted more than a second or two of the program. It wasn't like he just jumped right back up. It was a hard fall.
In another unusual podium placement here that I think probably stunned a lot of people. The U.S. team of Emily Brody and Ian Somerville slid into that bronze position. This is a week after having a disaster at Skate Canada when Ian took a really hard fall in the middle of one of their elements that took them out of the running at that event. In the U.S. roster of ice dance teams, I don't think you would think of Brody and Somerville as being one of the more outstanding teams. That middle tier of American teams is definitely a hot competition right now.
And it's dense. There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of talent there. And there's been plenty of criticism about them being kind of an unbalanced team. Like Ian is very showy and Emily is not. But what I think they showed here was, one, Emily had been coming back from injury. Last week at Skate Canada, she looked pretty stiff at that event, even though she's not the one who had mistakes. She just felt like she was being very cautious through a lot of it. Here, she looked way stronger, way more fluid. They looked like much more of a combined front out there. Their programs were really fun, really fluid, had a lot of energy and personality. And yeah, it brought them up. They were in fourth after the rhythm dance. They scored second in the free dance and landed third on the podium here for their first Grand Prix medal. Considering there were a number of other strong teams at this event, this was a real statement for that team.
I was really excited about it. Shocked, yes, but also really happy because especially their free dance is beautiful and they skated the hell out of it. I believe I saw them both talking about they were given a call by Shaylin Bourne, who they'd worked with on their programs this season, and she said to skate for each other. And that's what they did, and it showed. It was really connected skating. They just had a certain level of abandon that I haven't really seen from them before. Like I've seen it from one or the other, depending on the program. They just looked prepared to kind of go forward and challenge in a much more serious way. The fact that they beat the teams that they did here, to use your phrase, is a statement. And it should make people feel like we're mixing things up the year before the Olympics.
Well, and mixing things up is something that's always the conversation with ice dance about the hierarchy and the expectations, where so many of the competitions land just exactly how you think they're going to. And it always feels like you have to move up over years.
Fall in line.
And the judges just put people where they want them to be unless you really make a case for how bad you screwed up at that particular competition. But what we've seen so far in this Grand Prix is very different. They have been podiums that have not been expected. And there does seem to be more focus on what's actually happening on the ice rather than what is predetermined. As a fan and somebody who wants fairer sport, I really like to see that. And also, getting really expected by the book podiums is boring. It's nice when things get shaken up. Now, I'm less happy when I see one of my faves, Reed and Amber Livicus, fall to fourth, and by a smidgen here. They were less than a point behind Brody and Somerville. They were very good, but I think that looking at their free dance, it wasn't as strong as I'd like it to be. It looked a little frantic in places. They had 2 dynamite programs last year. This is my first time seeing them this season, so I don't really have anything to compare it with. I feel confident they're going to be able to clean it up, but they also didn't look perfectly happy with it coming off the ice.
I'm not sure on their programs this year. Like the rhythm dance, they did beautifully on. They were in third there, but it didn't look like they felt the music very much at all. Like they just sort of looked like brilliant skaters who did their job, but it's not memorable. But their free dance is very conceptual, like they always are. Big story, kind of a puppet theme. Like first he's the puppet master and then she's the puppet who takes over. It's intriguing. I love a good story, but it felt a little forced. But to your point about this is the first time we're seeing it, I have to give it time. I want to see it in its more fleshed out, fully formed idea. Like right now, I feel like we're still just seeing the inception point. I want to see it in a month or two. I want to see it at Europeans and see what it is there. I feel like I'll have a better feeling about.
I think Salias and Allison do great character work. And especially by the end of it, where you see the reversal where she becomes the puppet master and really takes on kind of this evil character, looks really fun. And I think Allison's going to really eat that role up. It's not perfect yet. I think it just needs some time. It was also like a little side-eye at the 5th place finish of the Mrazkova and Mrazik sibling pair out of Chechnya, because this team just, to me, just keeps getting better. Seeing them live, they were really stunning. I loved everything that they did here. they just keep seeming to get lower scores than they expect to, because you see it on their faces and the kiss and cry, and their coach always has that side eye as well. And I don't know how to evaluate all of those elements in ice dance. A lot of that is still very mercurial to me. But I think this team is great, especially I would shout out their costumes, because both their sets of costumes are awesome from a design standpoint. I would like to see them be hitting higher and a little bit better point value. They weren't far off of third and fourth here, just a couple of points, but I do think that their seventh place after the rhythm dance was low.
That's how I felt. I felt like they were scored pretty fairly in the free dance, where they did place third. The rhythm dance, I was left a little concerned and confused for the same reasons. I don't need to reiterate. I agree with everything you said. Right behind them, we had Nasset and Markelov, still in their debut Grand Prix season. I feel like they did a little better here than they did at Skate America. Their scores were similar, but I still feel like something you said a couple of weeks ago about them is still accurate. They're a really fun team to watch, and they have a lot of potential. But there is just a lot more flash than there is substance. So while I really do find them to be an exciting and fun team to watch, I understand why they're getting scored the way they are. And sometimes I feel like they're even being a little bit generous with the scores.
They have great lifts, and they definitely have a bunch of interesting holds and positions that they can take that seems like almost nobody else can. They're just showy. There's space for that, but I think that when you compare it to a lot of the more senior teams that have more experience in delivering something with a little bit more nuance to it, you really see them kind of settle into that mid-tier zone. But this is another really disappointing placement for the Canadian team of Laurent and Legac, a team that I really thought was going to be landing higher in these rankings this season. And they have just not been hitting it. And they and their whole team seem to be just as confused as us.
Their free dance, you can't question. They had a genuine big error, and it made sense. But the rhythm dance, again, just like the Marat 6, I was a little lost. And I don't always understand all of the ins and outs. So ice dance I tend to give more of a pass to than pairs and single skating, because I understand all the elements a bit more. But still, I feel like I've watched it long enough to know when something's good or not. And what they put out there, in my opinion, is very good. It's not maybe to the level that they were last season. I thought their programs last season were exceptional. In any case, the judges are telling them they don't like it. Similar to what we were saying about Guinard and Fabry and their free dance, I sort of feel like Laurent and Legac need to take a close look at especially their free dance and say, like, okay, what can we change here? Because this isn't selling right.
If there was an issue in the judging that I had during this event, was there were a lot of elements that were given low level scores for kind of everybody, often in ways that were not transparent to me as a viewer at all. But there were also lots of people who had little twizzle bobbles and things that, watching at home, were very clear sync issues or just little problems. And then we would see them get 4s for both partners and high GOE. And I know the judges, they can only see what they can see, especially after us having been at Skate America and recognizing that visibility is a real thing. And they have cameras and stuff too, but only I think 1 or 2 camera angles. So that's going to affect it. But there were just several times where we could look and go, oh, that was kind of a rough sequence. And you'd hear Mark go, oh, and then the scores would come up and obviously the judges had missed it. So there is still some problems in these scorings where you can see some things that take a hit and nobody knows why, and then obvious problems get high ratings and you're like, I don't know what's going on here. So this aspect of the sport remains more obtuse than I would like.
I think you're preaching to the choir, because most people feel the same in many, many ways. But speaking of scores, let's move on to the men. I'm going to preface talking about anybody here by just saying that our winner would have come in 5th at Skate Canada and 6th at Skate America. Just prefacing this whole conversation with that. Proceed.
It's no surprise that Adam Xiaohim-Fa won this. It's also not really any surprise that he started the event by landing in 8th in the short program and still won. Considering his meteoric ascension from 14th to 3rd at Worlds last year, anything is possible with Adam Xiaohim-Fa. You cannot count him out after a bad short program at all. yeah, I mean, he came back here and won the competition by 13 and change points.
I want to give you a correction in real time. He was 19th.
Oh, he was 19th at Worlds. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Sorry, just wanted to clarify because he is Adam Shohim-Fai and he is wild.
Yes. So 19th to 3rd at Worlds, which was absolutely
bananas.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely bananas. That's a good way of putting it. Here, you know, what you've got is a absolute mess of a short program, another Dune program. There were 2 fully costumed Dune programs in the men's division here. Adams was really strong. And you see that artistic lens that he skates through there. It does have kind of a weird moment where he just sort of flops on the ice and stays there for a couple of seconds and just has a nice little breather. I don't know if his character is supposed to be dead or something, and then he comes back to life. I don't know, Dune. I don't know how I feel about that element. It feels a little sloppy, but overall, you can't take away that he was the class of the field when it came to the free skate. But still, this is a win with a 2:46.58. What is going on? But the rest of this podium is pretty cool. I'm really happy to see Koshiro Shimada show up here in silver.
I love Koshiro Shimada and him getting a silver medal and his reaction and Stefan Lembiel's reaction and their reaction together. It warms my heart and makes me love figure skating. Koshiro Shimada is one of my 2 favorite current Japanese men's skaters. The other one was also here. It was Kazuki Tomono. And I feel like both of them represent this very musical, very positive, very upbeat type of vibe. And I love it. I love both of their skating so much. So just getting to see him have that moment of joy and after all the work that he's put in to get his first Grand Prix medal is really special.
I feel like I have to highlight right now that if this was being released in real time, I feel like Yuma Kageyama would enter the chat and be like, what about me?
You're right. I forgot. I think he hasn't appeared in the Grand Prix yet. So give me one more week and then he'll be here and I'll be like, never mind. I love him most. But then it's Koshiro and Kazuki Tomono. I mean, I'm serious. I love them.
Oh, they're great. They are so much fun to watch. They bring such a spark of joy and character to the ice. And the fact that they're best friends and they were here rooting each other on was so wholesome and so wonderful. But considering Koshiro did not have a super strong Skate America performance, I don't think he's anywhere in line for making to the Grand Prix final. But with the way men are menning, yeah, who knows? Still, this was a really nice thing to happen for him. And also a really nice and surprising and very, very close finish from the American Andrew Torgashev, who shows up in 3rd here with a 2:33.64. It's only 0.2 behind Koshiro. For Torgashev to be a guy who's a pretty hot and cold skater, but really nice when he's on, this was a nice vote of confidence for him in that race to be like the number 3 American man behind Ilya and Jason Brown. And considering how Jason Brown has not performed super well yet, he's kind of the second guy right now.
Jason will be fine.
Yeah, of course
I'm not
he will.
worried.
Yeah. I did like, we talked about Jason Brown last week, and I just want to hit something that he said in an interview, which was, what you're seeing now is what the process always looks like. It's just, I didn't compete during that process last year, so you didn't see it. It's always kind of like this. It'll be fine later. So
I trust him.
Yeah.
If there is someone in this sport that I trust, it is Jason Brown. But yeah, seeing Torgs, I love his short program. I'm so glad he kept the same one from last season. He didn't get to do it enough. It's so dynamic and interesting and well choreographed. It's really good. So getting to see him be successful with it here. And I'm not going to lie, I was shocked when I saw he got a medal here, and in the best way. It was a great surprise. And especially with him taking it over Mikhail Shidorov, who had a history-making combination here, I was a little shook.
This men's competition has a lot of like womp womp moments. If there's a significant womp womp moment, it is Mikhail Shidorov landing a clean triple axel quad toe combination. Never been landed in international competition before, and nobody noticed.
The technical panel didn't notice?
The technical panel got it wrong.
Mark didn't notice?
Yeah, he was like, because the quad toe was so clean and so fast, it kind of looked like a triple. Watching the broadcast version, the angle of it didn't make it super easy to kind of note either. So this big deal happens. Mikhail's super hyped getting off the ice. He's had a kind of a poor skate, but at the same time, he's just made history. And Mark's reaction is kind of like, well, he looks really happy with that kind of disappointing skate, but I guess that's good for him. And then as they're in like the slow-mo replays, he's like, oh, Mikhail made history. And only he knew. The audience didn't seem to know.
It was such a sad, like both happy and sad moment because I'm like, Mikhail deserved some big kudos there. And I felt like in the exhibition, he got all of his kudos.
So Mikhail here, beyond some rough skates, didn't live up to quite the general promise he has. He's still in fourth. It's not
I still
terrible.
see him being a medal threat at Worlds this year.
He is. And he's still a guy on the come up. But to see him come out at the gala as Kung Fu Panda, carrying over his costume that he used when he was in Japan touring with the Ice Tour, and to come out
full panda. He went full panda.
He went full panda. And also to have Torgashev and Amber Glenn come out on the ice with him to do a little bit. It's totally chaotic. He even jumped a couple of times. It's such a nice indication of who he is as a person. He can seem like a very serious guy on the ice. Then he seems like a very sweet guy in the kiss and cry. And he's obviously a very silly guy when he's out there in a full panda costume. I can't imagine what it's like to travel with that. That's nuts.
That was all I could think about was like him going through customs with a panda suit.
And he still had it on for the very end of it as well. And you can see that it delights him to do it. So Misha is great. I can't help but like this guy more every time I see him. Now there's a real war between him and Nika Godsey for the best, silliest gala performance.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll get an event where they both get to do it because it'll tear the place apart.
It's great. As I mentioned earlier, Kazuki Tomono was here. He came in third in the short, which was wonderful and kind of, again, a bit of a surprise. Sixth in the free. Fifth overall is, I think, about where he expected to land. He's still recovering as well from an injury, so he didn't have his full arsenal of technical ready to go. But also, we've just seen a couple of seasons where Kazuki hasn't really been amongst the top men. I'm really hoping that when we're in our Olympic season, somehow that changes because he's really special. And it makes me sad whenever he is not amongst those being considered for podiums. He's just a really, really special skater.
And then if you look at skaters who seem to have kind of a pattern, Nikolai Memela has that going for him right now, and not in a good way, but having utter failures in his short programs and then coming back in spectacular fashion in his free skates. So he was in 10th after the short. He was second in the free skate here.
He was great in the free skate.
So good. It landed him in 6th overall. Again, numerically, this is 227.62. It is not a big or competitive number, but Nikolai is a really wonderful skater when he's on. It's just trying to figure out how to balance that out. I know he had a lot of injury issues. He was fighting as well. I think that redemptive free skate was a big deal for him, but it would be nice to see him accomplish a little bit more. Alexander Selevko debuted here. We had not seen him yet this season. I think he skated at Lombardia, but we didn't actually see it. We couldn't find it online. He was second after the short program, so he was placed really nicely to begin with, but his free skate kind of fell apart. He just didn't look quite conditioned yet. He looked pretty blown out afterward. I expect better for him, especially as we get closer to Europeans, but right now he doesn't look like he's fully ready.
I do think the biggest disappointment of this one was 8th place for Boyang Jin because he was in first after the short program. I think we're all ready for the renaissance of Boyang Jin. It's just been a long road with him and you can't help but root for him. He's just such a wonderful presence on ice and he's just grown so much. Like he had always been just the jumper and now I feel like he's so much more. So getting that first place in the short was hopeful, but he was 11th in the free skate. He didn't look devastated. I feel like in some weird way he kind of expected it. He and Brian Orser, his coach, had good vibes afterwards. So hopefully that short program is a sign of what is to come for Boyang the rest of the season.
And I don't know what there really is to say about Lucas Britschke here other than I don't think these programs worked. I don't think they're quite ready for prime time. I like Lucas a lot, but neither of these programs just looked baked. They looked like they need some time to be put together and they didn't look ready for prime time.
I am really intrigued by his short program, though. The one that is...
Incorporate sign language?
Exactly. I want that one to work because I do feel like he has a really strong point of view with it. I'm just waiting for it to get a little bit more, a few more miles on it because I do think that could be a really, really good program.
I think he's trying to make statements with both these pieces. For as fun and silly. And again, you go to the gala and Lucas is very, very silly. But he's also somebody who wants to really say something with his skating. And I think both these programs are engineered to tell stories and to make statements. But again, I think that they just need a little more time in the oven before they're delivered hot and fresh, because they were not hot nor fresh yet.
Well, let's finish it up with the pairs. And it's really easy to just say Haas and Volodin were freaking awesome and took it by a mile.
Yeah, this is a dominant performance from Haas and Volodin. They've already looked so strong in the early part of the season. They came in here, they were super consistent. The programs look really nice. It showcases all of the things that they do really well. I don't think either of these programs are particularly surprising. I mean, they feel very on par with what they were doing last season. They don't feel like big swings.
No.
But they're delivered so well. And as a team, they are just so unified. They just fit together like puzzle pieces. Even though you have Giga Chad, Nikita, who always feels like when he emotes, it is him sort of putting on a character because he is so even keel. And you have Minerva, who by her own admissions is a much more up and down kind of personality, a little bit more prone to big happies and low lows. And so finding the way to communicate all of that energy and story and emotion on the ice, like she is the show and he is the stability. But they work so well together. These are lovely programs. And I think that it really does make a case for them winning the pairs division this season. The only thing is that last season, they won both Grand Prix qualifiers and then they won the Grand Prix final, and then they just did not look as good the rest of the season. They peaked a little early last time. So the question is, can they maintain this momentum all the way to Worlds?
On the other hand, I want to point out Sarah Conti and Niccolo Macchi, who had a blatantly terrible season last year. They had some moments that were good, but overall wasn't good. They looked wonderful here. Took silver, and honestly, I think the numbers probably should have been a little closer because I do think their free skate was a little underscored.
Yeah.
Which is honestly a good problem to have in the sense that it shows that they're showing up and they're doing the job. And this is the second time we've seen them this season. Both times they've looked really good. It just gives me a lot of optimism going forward into the rest of the season that we're going to see really good things from the two of them.
A lot of the chatter about this team is that they were a romantic pairing. They broke up, and the drama of that made it very difficult for them to skate together for a while. Yeah, completely understandably. And that emotional disconnection, along with all the pressure that landed on them last season after medaling at the previous year's Worlds, beat them up a lot. They still peaked at the end of the season, but here they look like a couple of people who have set all of that stuff into the context of the past and are now friends and partners and comfortable in their skin again. The joy that they really brought, especially from Sarah, because her emotive quality is just fabulous on the ice. Yeah, these programs were maybe more emotionally effective than technically, even though they were strong. Like, we're looking at they're 8 points back. I agree that free skate should have been scored higher, but just in general, mostly what I was impressed with was a team that looks like it's been injected with life again.
That's a really good way to put it. I was really happy to see that Ghilardi and Ambrosini came in third here, but I can't say that I necessarily agree with it. It was a messy rest of the pairs. But it was so close between them and Efimova and Mitrofanov, and then Pereira and Michaud. Like, it doesn't necessarily look it in the numbers, but if you watched it in real time, it was basically down to one lift that was missed by Efimova and Mitrofanov. So it's not that I don't think Ghilardi and Ambrosini earned it. It's just that it felt somehow off because they all made so many mistakes that it was hard to say, like, who was the least bad.
Yeah, the tough thing here is that, one, I really like Ghilardi and Ambrosini, but they have not looked very strong yet this season. They were one of my faves last season. I think that so much of what they bring to the ice is absolutely terrific. I don't think that their free skate thematic works yet, but there's time for them to kind of get that sorted out. But they were sixth after the short and then third kind of by default, I think, in the free skate, which rounded out with them being in third. Where I feel less comfortable about that is when you look at the fourth place position of Alyssa Efimova and Misha Mitrofanov from the US, who were fourth after the short, fourth after the free, and overall, I think were a better performing, consistent team. like you mentioned, Efimova and Mitrofanov did have a blown lift in their free, and that definitely lost them the podium. You could see it just kind of evaporate there.
Yep.
Overall, I think they were the better team than Ghiardi and Ambrosini, who just looked way too rough here. I would have really loved to have seen one more American team on the podium because that would have put them on all four disciplines.
That would have been great. But also, I think that Efimova and Mitrofanov were a bit underscored in their short program.
Yeah, I really enjoy that team far more than I think I expected to going into this season as a relatively unknown. I think we really only saw them for the first time last year at Nationals, and I'm very quickly becoming a fan of that team. I really liked them at Skate America a lot. Despite some issues here, I just think they're very promising. And
I agree.
And I think they're looking more consistent. Staying up is definitely an issue, but still pretty good.
And in the fifth position, after the short, Trent Michaud and Leah Pereira were in third, which I thought was fair and correct. They came in fifth in the free. I don't know. I don't love that free skate on them. I like their short. The free, I feel like, looks labored. And it doesn't look like they're comfortable in it yet. So it might just be, as we say a lot, it might just be it needs more miles on it, needs more time. But they looked really solid in that short program and really unstable in the free.
I like Leah and Trent a lot. That free skate's a hot mess.
Yeah.
It's just even.
Thank you for being more blunt. It kind of felt like a hot mess.
Fifth is maybe being generous in the free skate, except for kind of everything that falls after them is not even really all that much worth talking about. But it was a pretty ugly skate. And they're capable of much stronger. They know that.
I'm sure, yeah.
Like you said, there's time to fix that up, but it is a tremendous disappointment here. But they still stayed in the top 5, so that's something. But yeah, it's not what they were going for.
No, it feels like a step backwards for them. And I'm hoping they can correct that because they, like you said, they are a team that is better than what we saw here.
So I think that mostly wraps up everything that we wanted to talk about from this event. It's such a weird one because there are some really great highs. There's a lot of performances that I enjoyed a ton, but the numerical problems in the men's, those numbers are just so low. And they reflect a lot of the quality of the skating, which is to say that a lot of the quality was absent in that competition. Even with a lot of skaters I like a lot, there were definitely some messy things.
Now I have to ask you a loaded question. Who was gold in your heart?
I really went kind of back and forth on this in my head, just trying to figure out where I was going to land with it. But I am going to go with Rion Sumiyoshi.
That is exactly what I expected.
Well, obviously, I am a fan of Rion. I particularly enjoyed her gala performance. It was just so effervescent and joyous. Obviously, there's a lot of other good choices in here. And I really actually kind of debated about it with the Moravsky siblings because I really enjoyed their skates. And I think they kind of got robbed. But Rion is just a skater with a ton of potential that I enjoy a lot. And I think she has progressed so far already in this season that, yes, I give her my gold in my heart from this one.
And I am giving mine to Mikhail Shidorov because even though these programs weren't up to the level that he usually is technically, he did make history here and did not get the flowers he deserved. And I want to give him what few flowers I have and give him a good job. And also, I sometimes feel like Shidorov, for all that he's very popular online, doesn't necessarily get the appreciation he deserves yet. He's really young. He'll get there. He is a star of the future, and I appreciate him carrying a panda costume through customs, as I mentioned earlier. So for many, many reasons, I give it to Mikhail Shidorov. And he was one of the few things in a weekend full of skating that was very hot and cold. I felt like every time he was on the ice, even when he was making mistakes, I was happy to see him.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are halfway through the qualifiers for the Grand Prix already. This season is
weird. It's weird.
It's a weird season. It's definitely super weird. Last year's world champions are mostly, I let you discount Chalk and Bates landing in second at Skate America, but like Ilya, Kaori, Deanna and Max are all sitting with golds in their podium placements. Ilya's already locked. But Wakaba Higuchi already locked for the Women's Grand Prix final is a big deal. Amber Glenn is looking great. That bombshell that you dropped on me about Isabeau withdrawing from the Grand Prix, I was not ready for. I am shook I'm shooketh. What I don't know if the kids still say that anymore, but whatever.
We're not kids, so it's fine.
Yeah. So that's going to be real interesting because that will change the game on some of this stuff. So our next event is NHK Trophy in Japan, and there are a lot of high-powered competitors on their way to that right now. I saw the Instagram posts of everybody hopping on the planes.
Oh, yeah.
So we have faves like Miura and Kihara who are going to be there. You know, not podium threats, but people that I really enjoy, like Katya Kurakova is on the way there.
And my actual favorite Japanese man of the moment is debuting there. Yuma Kageyama, we get to see for his first Grand Prix appearance of this season. We have seen his programs already, and they're both stunners, so expect great things there. We'll also see Jason Brown, and we'll get to see Torgashev again this week.
Back to back.
Back to back. He just found out he was going because he's taking Gogolev's spot. So he gets to go straight from France to Japan. So I hope.
What a weird life for these folks.
I know. Actually, even though I'm sure it's exhausting, I'm hoping he can just carry the momentum with him. I mean, he just got his first Grand Prix medal.
Yeah.
Go Torgs.
And hopefully he got his shirt back from Ian Somerville. Because it looked like he lent his short program shirt to Ian to skate in the gala, because Ian and Emily didn't seem like they had packed gala outfits, probably not expecting to get there. So there's something that always amuses me. It's when you see the skaters swapping outfits for the gala because they didn't bring something.
When they were unprepared.
Yes. My classic version of that is Alyssa Liu's Olympic gala, where she's skating in Olivia Smart's ice dance outfit. So that's something about the community of skating where, you know, they help each other out with stuff like that I absolutely love. So we will talk to you after that event is over. So until then, tell us in the comments who was gold in your heart. What did you think of all these crazy scores? And what do you think is going to happen for the next 3 events leading up to the Grand Prix final?
Considering no one could have predicted what has been happening so far, I wish you luck, because I know our predictions are way off, like way off. So good luck.
It is a wacky pants season for sure. So until then, for Scoreography, I'm Adrian Buskey.
And I'm Wendy Buskey.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.